let me talk a little bit about the one thing that we didn't talk about before, which is the gakji, the thumb ring. And now, thumb rings actually can be made out of many different materials. And I brought a few different ones, including now, the styles of gakji, here in Korea, we basically have two styles of gakji. There's the amgakji and the sukgakji. Now, the amgakji is the most common one that you're going to find. And am and su it's a gender actually. Am, female, su, male. But it has nothing really truly to do with it for men using or women using. It's just because. And some things may become a little bit more evident. This is an amgakji. Now, this one is made out of dechunamu, the jujube. Okay, and it's a really hard wood. This is my favorite one. It's a little bit large and such, but I just really like it. It just when I draw back on the bow and such, it just feels right. This was made for me by one of my former members of Horimjeong many years ago. This here is a sukgakji, the male thumb ring.
I can see now.
Yeah. So anyway, they have the amgakji, sukgakji. Now these two are actually shot in two completely different ways. And also different materials. This was made out of a pool ball. And actually, this amgakji was made out of a pool ball also. I think this one was my son's at one time. Might have been mine, but it might have been my son's too. And then this one here is made out of water buffalo horn. Okay, yeah. Now, and this is where I can kind of delve into this a little bit. Lot of different rings. This is also actually water buffalo horn, but this was a golden horn. Yeah.
So water buffalo, but golden horn?
Yeah. You see, water buffalo horns actually come in different colors. There isn't just black. You have white. Now, a horn bowyer values the white horn tremendously. And so if you ever are able to buy a horn bow that uses the white horn, it's going to cost you a lot more because it's really considered a very, very valuable, because it's very rare to get the white horn. But then there is also, there is golden horn. And, just, I actually have all different types here. Black horn, gold horn. And I was telling you about my old business acquaintance in the Philippines. He also did mother of pearl inlay.
Wow.
Yeah. So in the end, after he passed away, his son wanted to just sell everything that his dad had made, and so he contacted me. He says, "You want this?" Yeah, sure. So I just bought the inventory at that point.
Mother of pearl, so like you kind of shed like pearl into it, or?
Yeah. It'd be a thing of actually having to carve into it and then glue that in there. Just trying to see. Let's see. What do I have? I was trying to look for one other thing, because another material that often that was used when I first started in Korean traditional archery is cow horn, because that was the easiest kind of horn for Koreans to get a hold of. And so back 30 years ago, most thumb rings were cow horn. And then that was when other people started saying, well, gee, how about pool balls are cheap. So buy a pool ball, cut it into thirds. You can have 3 thumb rings out of 1 pool ball. So there are many industrious people who did that. And so there are some thumb rings made out of metal, plastic. I mean, besides pool ball plastic, but just nowadays some people even do injection molding, just very super manufactured thumb rings, which personally I don't like. I like things that are crafted. But anyway, when you're going to be using you're going to be shooting Korean traditional archery, you're going to be using a thumb ring, and you want to get a ring that fits well. And it's probably for many people it's kind of a hard thing to find a ring that is really going to fit you well. But what you want to look for is it should be able to go on at a 90-degree angle like this and easily twist around till this part, the tongue of the ring, can cover the pad of your thumb, like that, right behind the joint, and it shouldn't come off easily. It should be able to move around fairly easily, but it shouldn't go like, you shouldn't be able to go like this, because if it does that, you're going to be like this, and oh, wow, I see my thumb ring halfway down the field. And I've seen that happen many times. People had an ill-fitting ring, and it would snap off. Now with the amgakji, what you do is you fit the string between the thumb and the ring. Okay? And the way that you are going to grip it is your index finger is going to come around the tip of your thumb like you're going to flip a coin. Okay? And then the arrow, and I'm going to do one of these things. Now, the arrow is going to be on the side of the bow that your dominant hand is. Now, in Western style archery, it's on the opposite side. So if you are shooting fingers like they do in Western style, like this, the arrow is going to be here. And a lot of that is because if you try to have fingers and shooting here, the arrow, it's not going to stay. It's going to go like this. So with fingers on the opposite to your dominant hand, but when you're shooting with a thumb ring, a gakji, it's going to be the same side as your dominant hand. And then this is where the knocking point comes in. It's going to fit on there. Now this one is actually a little loose because I don't have anything here to to really hold the knock in. And Korean knocks are wide compared to Western style knocks, which the slot is very narrow. And so something like this would fit a Western style arrow much better. But not a big thing. Still, it's not a big thing because, well, you're going to have your cock feather facing out. Now again, as I said, here you have between the thumb and the ring, and then get your finger going around here. What happens is your wrist twists in. And when your wrist twists in, it holds the arrow right against the bow. So now with this one, yeah, it's going to slide a little bit, but when you get used to it and such, you can generally you can generally get this to where it's not going to go anywhere. Now I'm not going to draw this in here for safety reasons, of course, with an arrow on it, but I can show you without an arrow. And as long as I don't let the thing go in dry fire, we're all fine. So again, pretend I have an arrow on here, and I've drawn this in here. Now we have to worry about our stance, how we stand. As a right-handed shooter, my left foot will be aimed at the target. My right foot is at about a 2 o'clock. Oh, you might just say roughly 45 degrees. It's going to be shoulder width. You should be comfortable. You don't want to be really stiff or anything like that. Now, going back to Western style archery, you'll notice they stand like this. They stand parallel to the target. And when they draw, with the fingers, they're like this. And that, just especially because of the way that they're drawing, this is the best way to do it. Now, you'll also notice that when people are shooting Western style archery, they'll have an arm guard, a bracer on their bow hand. Many of them will even have a chest guard, especially ladies, because you're going to have some serious contact. And it goes with Western style of shooting. Korean style, none of that happens. Why? Well, again, let's get into our stance. And then, I get my arrow on here, and then I'm drawing, and I get back to my anchor position. The anchor will be roughly back around here to your shoulder. And then, I have to take aim. Now I'm going 145 meters down the field. So I'm not going to be going straight on like this, unless I have a very powerful bow. It's going to be more like about, again, maybe up to 45 degrees. Now, 45 to 46 degrees, that would get your maximum distance. Depending on the power, the strength of your bow, you may, if you have a really powerful bow, you might bring it down a little bit. Like a 60-pound bow or something. Yeah, you'd probably bring it down a bit. But it's going to be somewhere up here. Now, aiming is one of those things that it's, with Korean traditional archery, it's almost hard to describe. Western archery, not hard at all. Because what are you doing? You're sighting right down the barrel. If you have a bare bow, you're sighting right down the shaft. Or if you happen to be using, an Olympic style bow, you'll have sights that you're actually looking through. We don't have any of that you can't do that with Korean archery. For one thing, the arrow is not on this side, it's on this side. So yeah, it's kind of hard to sight down a shaft. So what do? This is where you'll find how different archers will find their aim. Generally, and this is just from some archers how they would do, they would use this as their sight window for going 145 degrees down. So you can see that, and so you would have your target in here. Now, if you're at closer, then you would have your sight window maybe on this side, just above your. So, like if you're going at, maybe 30, 40 meters away, like that, then you can have something above here. But longer distance, you want it down here because you're going to be elevated because you're going a longer distance. So the sight window down around in this area. And then you're going to look and watch and see where your arrow lands. Also paying attention to things like wind. because wind is going to really affect it. Most clubs will have a windsock down at the end of the field. So you could look at that, because maybe the shooting line, there's no wind at all. It's like, gee, I don't feel anything. You know, you could drop a feather and it would just fall down. But then you look down the end of the field, the windsock is straight out, you know, because there's a heavy wind. You have to really pay attention to that. So usually your first few shots are going to probably not be right on mark, because you have to adjust for that. Kind of like, you know, what a sniper would be doing, you know, with even shooting a gun. You know, you have to take your windage and everything to say, okay, where's everything happening? And the same is true here. So you take your shot, and by the way, with this, you're drawn back here. What do? You just relax your hand. You let physics do the rest. The string will just slide right across the bottom face of the thumb ring, with the arrow attached to it until it reaches the end here, and off it goes. So release. And in Korean archery, we also have a follow through, just like what they do in Western archery. Western archery, you'll see them, you know, they'll be drawn back here, usually an anchor quite maybe right around the chin, and then when the release, you'll see them follow through with their hands back. We do pretty much the same thing in Korean traditional archery, except we're a little different. Like this release, some people like me, I just relax and my hand is just usually right there. Some people will do a full open thing. You'll see some styles there. There are certain styles of Korean archery where they do this. They were styles that were actually taken from like the Chinese styles of shooting. And the Japanese even do similar with their Yumi bows. But it's not a really common style. Usually here it's just relax and just let the string do the rest. And once you reach anchor point, you want to stay there. You don't want to start letting up or anything like that. Timing is important. So you get to anchor, and you might hold it from 3 to 5 seconds. Why? It's getting your body and your mind kind of together and on target. Because you want that everything is going to where you want it to go. Now, over time, when you do a lot of practicing like this, over time it'll become muscle memory, and you don't even think about it. And one of the best ways to test that is what we call yasa. Yasa means night shooting. Yeah, the ya refers to night, sa is shooting. And yasa, it's fun. It's strange at first, but it's fun because you're on the shooting line, it's dark. And they might have a light down at the very, very end on one of the targets. You can see the illuminated target. You see nothing in between you and the target. And so shooting down range, it's like, at first, it's like, I don't know where the heck my arrow's going to go. I might lose this thing, you know, and as we know, with the bamboo, that's really an expensive thing to happen. But with muscle memory, you really don't have to worry about that. What I often would do when I would do yasa, I would close my eyes. I would have my eyes open at the very beginning, but then when I got back to anchor, just close my eyes to feel it, and then release. Some of my best shooting was during yasa, because in the daytime when you're shooting, you're concentrating too much. You're overthinking yourself. Night shooting, you can't do that. You have to truly feel it. It's really an instinctive form of shooting. And so over time, you'll get muscle memory. And yasa is a good way to practice that muscle memory. That's why a lot of archers like to do nighttime shooting, is just to get that instinctive feel, so that when they actually have to have to shoot during a competition, they almost don't even think about it. It's like, now, here's another thing. We're talking about a follow-through. I would say that the Korean follow-through isn't so much with your draw hand as it is with your bow hand. Why is that? Well, because when you release, when you're back, and by the way, you'll bring it back to just the back of the tip usually, and you always want to anchor at the same spot. Otherwise, you're going to have very different possibilities there. But when you release and the arrow goes off, the bow will generally twist out like this. There's a little bit of it's kind of a torque almost. And depending on the archer may even, when you see them released, they'll kind of go even maybe a little bit like this. And that's actually where you're going to, I would call this more of a follow through than here. Is how this is released. And one of the reasons for this is because there's a thing called archer's paradox, which it doesn't matter what style of archery you're shooting, Western style, Korean style, Chinese style, Japanese style, doesn't matter. You're going to have archer's paradox, which is where the arrow tries to wrap around the bow. And then it does this kind of oscillation until finally it evens out. In short distance shooting, that's really important because if you have arrows going like this, you're not going to be hitting your target. Korean traditional archery, it's not quite as bad because almost no matter what you do, the arrow will have already worked itself out by the time it gets 145 meters down the field. It'll be pretty much worked out. But still, when people release like this, the arrow is not really trying to wrap around the bow at that point because there's no bow in its way. And it tends to, I mean, you still get paradox no matter what you do, but in my experience, I found it to be a lot less when you have your bow follow through. Whether that's scientifically true or not, I guess we would have to ask some experts, maybe have done some slow motion video and such, and watch what happens. But this brings me to one other thing, is about the arrow itself. These arrows have a very stiff, what we call spine. Spine is the stiffness of an arrow. Korean arrows, the spine is very stiff. When I measured these on a spine meter, usually about 70 pounds they would measure for, which is that's a very, very stiff spine. If you're shooting short distance and such, you want to have the spine matched to the bow. So if you're shooting a 50-pound bow like this one is, this is 50 pound at 31 inches. 28 inches is the typical for fingers. Korean traditional, 31 inches, about 3 inches more. This is 50 pounds at 31 inches. But if I were to shoot this bow short distance using fingers, I would want to get an arrow that was spined probably within 10 pounds. 5 pounds, maybe 45 to 55 pound spine, somewhere in there. Because that means that it bends more for this draw weight. If I try to shoot this 70-pound spine arrow short distance, it's probably going to be going off. It's probably going to mostly be going that direction because it's not going to be able to bend around so much because it's too stiff. So it's going to kind of veer off. So you want to get an arrow that, well, actually, if you're shooting fingers, it's going to be over here. You want to get an arrow that bends around a little bit like that. So you don't want to have a really stiff spine. But in Korean traditional archery, it's not a big thing. When I first started and I was asking the Fletcher a very naive question about, well, what about spine? Kind of looked at me. What are you talking about? They don't, back then anyway, it was like they didn't even understand what spine was. And how do you figure out what arrow you are going to use? Weight and length. Chi and don. Don is the weight, chi is the length. So for instance, and actually if you look at one of these arrows, you'll see on the shaft itself, here it has as chil chi, chil don. Now, chi is a measurement. You can relate it to, well, you could do it to inches, but usually here in Korea, of course, it's to the metric system. It refers to what length past a standard length. Now, the standard length in Korean archery is used, it's called the ja, or the chuk. Chuk and ja are basically the same thing, which is about 30.3 centimeters. And this is usually ija, so 2 ja, and then some percentage of that. But then it gives, you have all the way down to the chi, which is just minute. They're actually just minute lengths. So this one here, the chil chi, this is a fairly standard length. This one here, it's about, what, 89 centimeters, something like that. So fairly standard. Now the chil don is a traditional Korean weight measurement. And so it'll be this number times the Korean weight of the don. And that's, of course, in grams. Well, grains is what we actually measure with arrows. This one here is about 400 grains. All right, this one's about 400 grains. But anyway, depending on your draw length is all the arrow maker, the Fletcher, worries about is how long is your draw length? And then he'll think about, okay, if you have a heavy bow, well then probably you're going to have maybe a little heavier arrow. A little heavier bow, a little heavier arrow. But they never really kind of put the two together about the spine. With them, I was like, what's that?
Because Archer's paradox usually straightens itself out, so they don't worry about it.
That's what I always came to understand, because of the distance. But however, just for shooting purposes and everything, just a matter of getting what fits you. So when I was first going for an arrow and such, the Fletcher would look at me. All right, you have you're kind of you're a big guy. All right, yeah, all right. Chil chi chil don.